Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Certified Forgotten. We're your horror podcast that talks about films with 10 or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, except when we aren't. We also do these episodes called Uncertified, where we talk about a new release. And me and my friend and my business partner and my, to quote Russian doll, sweet birthday baby, talk about new releases. We're talking about Faces of Death, but I got to start this episode off by saying happy birthday, Matinato.
Thank you very much. This is, we're inching closer to 40, but it's my last year. I think I can canonically say I'm in my mid 30s at 37.
That's a little sweaty, but I think you've like until you're 37 and a half, I feel like you could say
Yeah.
mid 30s if you want to. So you do have a little bit. I'll grant the premise on that.
I'm going to milk that half a year for all it's worth. I'm just going to say it every time I can.
So the reason we didn't have an episode for you last week is because and again, I'm going to do it because I my favorite thing to do when it's somebody's birthday, sweet birthday baby, was at Overlook in New Orleans watching some new release films, interviewing John Kassir with Perry Nemiroff in a minute or less. How was your Overlook experience this year?
Oh, beautiful. I am a huge fan of the Overlook Film Festival. It's interesting because as a critic, I don't really see much there because a lot of the movies I've seen at Sundance and South by already. But I go because they have so much more to offer. Like they have this whole immersive slate that you can get into. You can honestly go for just the immersive if you wanted to. And then on top of that, even though I've seen The Obsession and I've seen all the big titles that they get, I still get to then go around and see the little guys. Like I really liked Parasomnia, which I missed at Brooklyn Horror, and it played there, so I was able to get that in. The new Fessenden movie, Trauma or Monsters All, his MonsterVerse smash up that the Dark Universe has failed how many times? What, 3 times? And Fessenden's out here and he made his own Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, and then they had a crossover before a Dark Universe that could actually succeed.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really fun doing that. There was also this movie called Demon Lover Diary that was basically lost to the world, and it is this bonkers actual diary documentary kind of style movie about the making of this small indie horror film called Demon Lover. And it just like it's unlike anything I have kind of seen before, just a real intimate take of these lunatics trying to make this movie. And that's the kind of stuff I go for Overlook for. I love the programming that they're able to sneak in. And again, I might not be seeing the largest titles there, but that's because I've done it already. So that affords me the opportunity to really dig into what the programmers over there are really good at too. The stuff that only the sickos are there for. And it's like, yeah, that's me. I'm sicko. And also just it's New Orleans. I mean, I never had a bad meal. I never had a bad time. You go to New Orleans. I urge anyone to just culture, everything about it. It is such a beautiful city.
Am I correct in saying, because I've been to Overlook as well, and New Orleans is a hell of a city. The festival is a hell of a festival. Love the Puritania, the vintage theater that they have, the single screen. It's one of my favorite movie theaters in America, honestly. I just think it's so cool. It feels like the Overlook is kind of running ahead of the rest of the crowd when it comes to genre festivals. I know that these things come in ebbs and waves, and I know Fantasia still has a lot of love. Fantastic Fest still has a lot of love. I don't want to take anything away from those. But I sense a congregating. I sense that people are going to New Orleans for this film festival. And that to me is sort of maybe the leading indicator is which are the festivals that people travel for. And a lot of people that don't always travel for film festivals traveled to New Orleans to go see this one. I feel like it's having a moment.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to say that it's, quote unquote better than a bunch of others because I think with these regional festivals, they all have they're all snowflakes, like a lot of them are kind of playing an overlap of movies. So you're looking at them to say, okay, so what is my draw here? And, like Brooklyn Horror, it's this great own little festival that if you want to go to Brooklyn, if you want to be in New York City, if you want to especially be at the Nighthawk and that vibe and vibe with that crew, I think it's such a great fest to go to. Beyond Fest Chicago starting up. I wish I could have done that the week before Overlook. And I'm now thinking about next year, like, damn, how am I going to fit them in? Like, if I can do it. But I would say what Overlook brings to the table that no one else does is that really good balance between community and movies. And I think New Orleans affords a much easier communal hangout vibe because you can just go on the street and drink. You can just do this. You can just do that. So I feel like there is a much larger pull for all of us, who travel in for it, the critics and whatnot, to kind of really take advantage of the fact that not only is it like a festival for movie lovers and put on by people who love the movies as well. Like there's something about opening night starting with a second line and
Yeah.
just walking through the streets in New Orleans with the entire festival crew and led by Sean Kassir. And, it's the little idiosyncrasies that the area offers. And, it does give me vibes of being back at Fantastic Fest years ago when I think Fantastic Fest had a different, not the bad culture, like fuck the bad culture part of Fantastic Fest, but
Right.
the actual hangout culture of Fantastic Fest. I think that was prime for me. That was the best. I don't know, like, I'm meeting people like you and I'm meeting people like here and there, just like it was crazy. I think that was some of the best times I've ever had as a critic. And to say that Overlook has the capability to step in and be that festival moving forward. Yeah.
The vibes are good. The vibes aren't always good, but here the vibes are good.
The vibes are good. And it's like, it's the rejuvenation too for our little podcast in a way, because listen, there has not been a guest episode in a hot second, and that is my fault. I'm going to own that on my
we are
on my
busy
side of
people
it.
with busy lives.
I know,
and we have
but
awesome guests in mind. I know you've talked to me about this.
I was going to say, like, it was nice being an Overlook though, and just like getting back in the trenches and just talking to all these people and just being like, oh shit, like we should have you on the episode. We should have you on this episode. So I am, I'm finally home for a long stretch. We've got the time to dig in and get back to some guest episodes. So if you're listening to this, I appreciate it. And we appreciate you being here. And we keep saying, we're a podcast of 10 horror movies with 10 or less critic reviews, and we are going to get back to that. So thank you for the extended patience while we get back to normal.
I love it. Well, even if it's just you and me, I always have a good time. I feel like I said this on social media because it was your birthday yesterday. I feel like I have my best insights when I'm talking to you about movies. That is the place where I feel like your energy hits me in just the right way, where I think of stuff that I might not if I was just, sitting at a computer or even talking to somebody else about it. So if it's just the two of us, I'm having a good time. I'm happy. And I think this is going to be a good episode for us because this is a movie that we're in slightly different but maybe complementary places on. So let's dig into that a little bit. So this week on our non-guest episode, Donato and I are going to talk about Faces of Death. And if you have not seen it, a quick plot synopsis is in order. After a college social media stunt ends in tragedy, Margot Romero tries to atone for her mistake by working as a content moderator for Kino, an app that, for legal reasons, is definitely not TikTok. Margot prides herself on being the first line of defense against dangerous content. That is until she stumbles across the profile of a possible serial killer. But as Margot races to discover the links between the creator and his missing victims, she does not realize that she may very well be his next target. Directed by Daniel Goldhaber and written by Goldhaber and Isa Mazzei, Faces of Death is the kind of meta sequel that would make Grave Encounters 2 proud. Dropping a Grave Encounters 2 reference right from the jump. I'm on my A game today.
That's a good one. That's a deep one.
Thank you. Matt Donato, where did you see Faces of Death for the first time?
Unfortunately, I was sick, so I had to watch this one not in a theater and on a screener. That is just unfortunately how it went. And I would have loved to see it at a festival too. Like unfortunately, Overlook was my only shot, but It was way too late. Embargo was the week before, so this was definitely an assignment watch. And I don't think that, like, I'm not one of those people. It's like, oh, I have to see it in a theater, or it's not going to be like, no, the movie's the movie. It speaks for itself, whether you're at home and in a theater. Like my setup is good enough where I'm not worried about it. And I wasn't a fan, and I think that's. It was definitely surprising to some people because when I posted my review, I immediately got DMs that were like, "The fuck!" Like I thought this was going to be so up your alley.
Yeah,
and that is just one of the things about me being unpredictable and pew pew wild card. Wild card bitches. But no, I appreciate aspects of this movie. I am happy it got made. I'm happy it finally got out there. I know it was touch and go for a while because the studios kind of held on to it. We don't know why, but this one had a long road, and I always love to see for the filmmakers a movie finally get out there and find its audience. But I was not I wasn't impressed by a few aspects of it as well. And to
Mm.
me, it felt like an amalgamation of better movies just kind of cobbled together with Faces of Death slapped on. And it's so intriguing, the concept. The idea that Faces of Death has inspired this new serial killer, and he is also inspired by the fame he achieves online. And, he's chasing clicks. He's everything about like what he's doing is based on what social media and the onlineosphere has done to our society. So like it's got so much really good commentary in there, but I just never felt like there was more substance than this was just a hollow kind of retelling of those themes.
And remind me, because I glanced at your review, saw that you gave it a 2.5 out of 5 at Daily Dead. But what I can't remember off the top of my head is how you feel about Goldhaber and Isa Mazzei's previous collaborations. Are you a fan of Cam, and are you a fan of How to Blow Up a Pipeline?
I really have to watch Cam again because I did not like Cam when I first saw it. I was very much in the opposition on that.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. I don't know. I like literally. I want to go back and read my review and go back and rewatch it because it was that much of a like. Oh yeah, no, this is not good. And then all of a sudden, it's like almost got 100% Rotten Tomatoes. I'm like, oh shit, like I am definitely this is my Babadook moment again. Like,
Yeah.
yep, nope, just don't like it. But no, Pipeline's great. Pipeline is fucking fantastic. I'm with you on that one. I know how much you adore that movie. So like,
Yes.
I'm not fully out on them. I definitely think that they're very good at what they do. It's just they take risks, and sometimes risks don't pay off, I think is maybe the way to say that.
Yeah. It's funny. This is the second conversation I've had about Faces of Death this week because some friends who live down the street that run a podcast here in Philadelphia called Cult Pop. Shout out JD, shout out Noel, and shout out Alice for inviting me and having me come on the podcast and talk about two movies now, The Bride and this, which are both complicated mixed movies. So the conversations have been good. But already we're talking about like four different things that I didn't get a chance to talk about with them. And I think one of the things that I really, really love about Mazzei and about Goldhaber, I don't want to say that they are, I want to compare them to Rod Sterling, but I don't want to compare them to Rod Sterling in the sense that they're doing some like big twist or reveal. It's the fact that there is a like a disassociation, a discomfort that they are able to capture in their films. The fact that their first film is about a cam girl who starts to have her online personality literally taken from her. That How to Blow Up a Pipeline is about a group of Gen Z activists who are in various stages of having their lives falling apart. And Faces of Death, too. I think that like all of these are films that are just sort of a through the looking glass depiction of various parts of American society. They show us a world where stuff is not right. And you know that it's not right. You may not be able to put your finger on it specifically. But I think that's the Rod Sterlingness of it all, is this idea that that stuff that is familiar, parallel universes, falling asleep and waking up in a different dimension, that kind of stuff, like it just feels wrong. And the longer you live in it, the more that you feel like this isn't the way that things should have been. And I think that's something that Faces of Death does too. Is I loved the way that Faces of Death captures our relationship to social media, and I think the way that it uses the original 1978 film. We'll talk about that in a second, I'm sure. But I think that there is a pervasive sense of wrongness that is present in Faces of Death. That is the big idea, and whether that translates to the story elements, whether that translates to performance, whether that translates to all these little different pieces here. There are so many times over the course of Faces of Death where I just felt myself being like, this is slightly like our world, but not, right? The Star Trek idea of like it's everybody, but they all have goatees. Like it's this thing where I'm like, it just feels like this is slightly wrong. Charlie XCX showing up for like 5 seconds and being super mad at, like super into the idea that all of this violence is happening. There is this unease that they tap into as genre filmmakers. And I think before we talk about any of the elements of Faces of Death, that vibe, that energy was present throughout the film for me. And I kept finding myself on its wavelength. Not always, and I would fall out of it. And there's stuff the movie that did that I didn't like. I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 not a 2.5 out of 5. So we're talking about a matter of degrees here. The difference between fresh and rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, if you care. But yeah, it's they're vibe filmmakers, and while I'm not an enthusiastic and throaty 3 for 3 for the two of them, I see what they're doing, and I like the way they're tapping into this world.
It's funny because 100 you what you said is a really great distillation of what they do with their movies, and also Faces of Death. Like the idea that they, number one, didn't remake Faces of Death, which thank God we didn't need to remake a
Right.
Faces of Death. Like we don't need another mockumentary style film. And to find the endpoint that they did of content moderation and what this kind of like violence can, when shown to people, like it desensitizes you, all those things, like everything that Screen Life movies and these kind of movies have been hammering home, like Unfriended Dark Web, all these films out there that have been doing this. Spree, Random Acts of Violence, even about Jay Baruchel's movie about a comic that inspires a killer, and he like recreates all the,
Remember that? I
yeah,
saw that
so
at
like,
South by. That was a rough
yep,
watch. Like
yeah,
a nihilistic mean watch. Yeah.
exactly. Like Faces fits right in with them. And it's actually crazy too, because at South by this year, I saw a movie called Monitor, and the setup for Monitor is exactly the same as Faces of Death. We're talking about a content moderator for a fake, definitely not TikTok.
Mm.
And there is the element of a sibling involved as well. Like it's so similar outside of the serial killer, because Monitor's about a demon, and Monitor's about like she watches a video that unlocks a ring like demon that chases her and can only go through screens. And like I think there's such really interesting complementary watches, because while they are so similar in setup, they do such different things with how the horror kind of unfolds. um but just to say, like, content moderation is having its moment for the horror sphere.
Yeah.
Grind, which I saw at South by, a horror anthology about corporate horror, has an entire section where an Amazon like company has content moderators going through videos on their social media. It's so funny to say, like, this is having such a resurgence right now. Where I think Faces of Death gets lost, though, is exactly what you're saying, where the filmmaking team wants to make a close to reality film that isn't quite reality. Like you said, there's something off always. And I struggled with that at points, because what they're doing is serving the movie, but it doesn't feel like it serves the larger logic at play.
Yeah.
There are just moments to me that felt out of place. And like a big one for me is Barbie's character is like, running away from Dacre's serial killer at one point. And like he just kind of gives up and lets her go. And it's a really strange moment for me, because he could easily catch her, and he could easily like end this movie, but we can't end the movie halfway through, or like,
Right.
this in this amount of time. So like I just moments like that where I didn't feel that the movie really knew how to get from point A to point B. It just knew what it wanted to say. And that's fine, because sometimes, substance doesn't have to be, or the substance over the actual execution is sometimes okay to say. But I felt too many moments here. And like, it's funny, because like one of the moments I did call out, we were talking about this last night over dinner. I was talking with Dorina, who I've had on the podcast here, and who is so brilliant. And like, she loved Faces. She's like, I can't wait to talk to you like later about Faces, because like we couldn't be more opposed.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the moments I was kind of just like, well, yeah, like, I don't know. I felt that whole cop moment was also just askew. I get it. I get the commentary, what it's going for, but it just didn't fit once again. Like he's able to get away with it so easy. And she's like, yeah, but like, no, that's a brilliant moment, because like, of course the cops don't believe a woman, and they just believe the man and stuff like that. So like, there are aspects here that like, depending on how you read it, they're super valuable. They're super like, going to be exactly your shit. I don't know. I guess there was just some of that surreality that didn't play the way I wanted to, despite the fact that I think that Dacre did a great job pulling from movies like Manhunter, pulling his Dexter moments. Like there is so much again of American Psycho, and the inspirations are clear. But
Yeah.
I think Dacre actually did do a good job of being the psychopath. Man, there's such a good line in there, like about the attention economy that we're in now, and being likes and clicks are more valuable than money. And I love that mindset. I love the psychosis that he brings to that character and saying all those things. But yeah, like it's just such a strange thing because I don't know, so much of this is my shit. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. I'm going to add to the list earlier. I was looking it up. American Sweatshop with Lily Reinhart, which I think comes out this year or played festivals in 2025. Also about a not a horror movie, but a drama um, thriller about a content moderator. Content moderation is absolutely having a moment. Um, I think part of the I'm warmer on Faces of Death than you, for sure. But what I feel exactly what you are saying about the film, and I think part of that is the fact that I truly think How to Blow Up a Pipeline might be my movie of the decade. Like, I think that it is a masterpiece, and I don't throw that word around. I think that it is a masterpiece as much because it is a heist film, and it is unapologetically a heist film. It is a really good heist film. You were watching a crew come together and do a job, right? And so I think that part of the reason I love that movie is because it has such big things to say, but never feels out of balance with the story that it's telling and how it's telling it. It is always a really, really good heist film that also happens to be about this incredibly important and depressing issue. And I think you could say the same thing about Cam. Cam is, it is more of more of a conventional and straightforward horror film, but it feels very in balance with what it's trying to say about, streaming culture and cam girl culture. And I think the issue with Faces of Death, what makes it different and what knocks it down a peg is the fact that to the point that you just said, it's never quite in sync. There's two big elements to it. There is the Margot storyline, which is like a more traditional Giallo and slasher. There is the killer storyline, which is more of like a Henry portrait of a serial killer kind of thing, I guess. Manhunter, a great example in terms of what he's doing there as well. And those are two tonally different horror films, but can work together a little bit. And then there is the movie, the overall ideas and concepts and messages behind the movie and how we use social media. And unlike Cam, and certainly unlike How to Blow Up a Pipeline, it just never quite coalesces. It is a movie that moves forward and sort of like stops and starts. And there are things that this movie does that I think are as good as anything I've seen in the theater in 2026, but maybe even, last year too. There are ideas and concepts and moments. Just the nihilism of going through and flagging all sexual content that is actually like life-saving and important at the beginning of the film. Margot is flagging like how to use Narcan, how to put condoms on, no nudity, no drug use whatsoever, but that stuff gets thrown into a moderation queue, and like physical abuse is fine. That the movie doesn't step on the moment, it just plays out. It's like it is a damning indictment that works at all levels. It's entertaining, it's mean, it's sad, it's all those things. And there are so many moments throughout the film where like it's I've used this analogy before, right? It's like watching your windshield wipers and like the blinking lights of the car in front of you at a stop sign. Like it's just like they're out of sync, they're out of sync, they're out of sync. They match up, they match up, they match up. They're out of sync, they're out of sync, they're out of sync. And that is a lot of the film. And it never lost me, but I felt myself constantly throughout the movie saying, "Oh, like I wish it had followed that thread, or I wish it could have maintained that idea, or I wish it could have like elevated this, come together and created something a little bit bigger and better." And I think that that's just, maybe it's just that this movie came together quickly. Maybe it's just that this was an idea that kind of backed into a Faces of Death adaptation or something. It feels like it was never quite as holistic as the other films that they've made together. And I think that's fine. If this is their if this is their one for the studio, right? Like one for me, one for the studio. I'm not going to be mad if this is their one for the studio.
Yeah, if this is their one for the studio, they got away with murder. Like that's
Yeah.
such an accomplishment in a good way, like 100%. It takes, I'll say it again, it takes risks, and that's cool. And that's, I'll still rather watch something like Faces of Death than a padded safety studio project. So like there is that aspect of it. Is the violence good? Of course it is. Like we're talking about a movie about Faces of Death and taking direct cues from Faces of Death. I love the aspect of Dacre's character recreating the kills specifically and using the mannequins as the representation of the reenactment. So like quote unquote, like he's not even doing the killing. These like
Right.
elaborate mannequin traps are doing it. But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, why is he using the mannequins? Like why, like I get it, but I also don't. I don't think the film actually comes together, like you said, and telling you not that I have to be spoon fed, obviously. Like we
Right.
watch many things that remain ambiguous, but in the way that this film particularly puts itself together, it is kind of just throwing things at the wall. And you know, are there some awesome shots reminiscent of the Elijah Wood Maniac remake that I fucking adore? Yeah, those mannequins are used to nasty effect. Are there horrible stabbing scenes? You know, the deaths that we actually do see, the brain bashing, like you know, everyone's favorites from Faces of Death are coming back
Yeah.
again. So you know, as the Gorehound, as one of those, I again, like I can only appreciate what's going on and be like, God, like in a different movie, I think this would be such a monumental case of, you know, representation of consuming just this horrible shit and what that does to you. But again, I almost feel like at the end though, it doesn't come together how I want it to with the message. I
Yeah.
understand. I don't want to do too much spoilery because this is brand new, and you know we're gonna give people time to watch it. But for my 2 cents, for everything we're talking about, for everything it's trying to tackle, and like the brilliance in all these themes that are coming together, I don't know if by the end it actually says what it wants to clearly and fully.
Yeah.
Where I have seen, you know, like I don't know if I love random acts of kindness, but it really does get across its messages like a fucking sledgehammer. Um, Spree, I don't like, but at the same time, it is horrifying to see like the playing out of a live streaming serial killer. And I kind of I think where like, you know, Dacre's character kind of fits in there. And, you know, he's a Patrick Bateman. I get it. Like there's so much of the, you know, chameleon act of being a normal human and then being the killer chasing fame and stuff. But I just you know, I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I am
Yeah.
having trouble with the connection of all, like, you know, building a Lego set and all of a sudden it's like, it's almost like that meme that I keep, or like there's a TikToker and his hilarious thing is looking at instructions for a Lego cat. And then he like pans up and he's like, oh man. And it's like the Millennium Falcon is the head. Like that's kind
I've
of what I
seen that
feel like.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel like Faces of Death is like, you know, the pieces are there. You know what it should look like. Like you're doing everything by the books, and all of a sudden by the end of it, you have something completely wrong and like not put together the way it should be. And I think that is how I feel about Faces of Death. Everything about it is right, and yet the final assembly just doesn't look the way it should. I think that's the best way I can kind of say it.
Well, let me ask you our last question because I think this is a dividing line for some folks, and I came up very briefly on the Cult Pop podcast. So I've been itching to hear your thoughts on this because I didn't get a chance to get into it. What do you think, or how do you feel about the film's connection to the original Faces of Death? Because I've seen some people be like, "What was the point of that?" I've seen some people be like, "I really liked it." Where it lands with why Faces of Death? How do you feel about that?
I think it's a bad Faces of Death movie, but I think it uses the material correctly, if that makes sense. Like, if we're grading it purely on being a Faces of Death movie, I don't think it's a good one because it doesn't want to be a Faces of Death movie. It wants to be a serial killer movie. It wants to be everything we talked about. And yet, when I look at that and I say, I go back to what I said before, I wouldn't want a remake. I don't want another
Yeah.
faux documentary. Like, using it the way they used it, I think is a brilliant endpoint. I think they found a way into the franchise that actually comments on what the fuck this franchise became, and the idea that if you research the actual history behind Faces of Death, like there really was a murder because somebody watched Faces of Death and they killed. I think he was a 15-year-old and like he killed a friend because he said he wanted to see the face of death. Like he'd watched these movies and he just wanted to see it for himself. And like that with that context too, knowing that this is a real thing that happened, you know, this Faces of Death is fabricated obviously, um but to not even comment on that a little bit and to not even like bring that into the story, that's where it just seems weird. Like we have the
Mm,
real situation of a Faces of Death murder, and yet it's not part of this. I'm real conflicted about the whole thing because
yeah.
correct, but also no.
I will say that I think the smartest thing this movie does is make it so that the killer doesn't actually really give a shit about the Faces of Death movie in 1978. And I think it's kind of clear that whatever they may say in interviews and on junkets, I don't think that Faces of Death to Mazzei and to Goldhaber is of any real value or importance whatsoever. Like I said in my review, that this movie could, like, the thing that is driving these murders or inspiring these murders very well could have been Theater of Blood, the old Vincent Price film. Like, it could have been anything, because that's the point, is capturing something that's trending without any appreciation or acknowledgement or deeper understanding or give a shitness towards the things that you're just sort of piggybacking on. You know, the TikTokness of like every TikTok I see has this weird, like, you know, description of Panamanian politics or something because those hashtags happen to be whatever is trending, right? It's that notion of it doesn't really matter. It very well could have been something else. And that is a difficult note to to try and land your movie on, because then you're sort of like, what's the point of all of this if it didn't matter for the film or for the characters? But that's ballsy to me. I think that is the movie's biggest swing, is how faithful it is in recreating Faces of Death, and then how the film sort of ends in place where it says, I don't really give a shit about Faces of Death. Could have been anything. Could have been any movie. Something that just happened to get clicks and likes. I would have done it. And I can sit in that decision and kind of roll around and luxuriate in why that is so smart, and why that makes for such a emotionally unsatisfying ending, and how that like takes me out of things. Like, it's just, there's a lot going on in that decision, and I'm pointing at my head, I love it. Pointing at my heart, I don't know if I love it, but I'm here for it.
Ditto.
All right. That's it. That's our conversation about Faces of Death. It is still playing in theaters across America. We had however you feel about it, there was a week last week where Faces of Death and Exit 8 were playing in multiplexes everywhere at the same time. That's pretty fucking cool. I'd like to see a lot more of that, Hollywood, if you will. But as we move into the rest of the month, and as we move into the rest of the horror season, Mr. Donato, where can folks connect with you online, and where they're going to find all your reviews these days? I feel like you are in a monogamous relationship with a particular site.
Yeah, I think my horror stuff is spoken for at Daily Dead. So, I am, I'm the lead critic there, so I'm not going to bury that lead. But yeah, you can follow me at Donato Bomb, DonatoBomb, and that is Letterboxd, Blue Sky, and Instagram mostly. But as Mr. Monagle said, yeah, like Daily Dead, please obviously read the hell out of that, because my horror reviews are always going to be there, and then whatever I can sell elsewhere, it's going to be a whole smattering of whatever whoever's paying at the time. But if you follow the socials, I'll tell you.
I love it. As for myself, I'm just on Blue Sky when it's working. It's Monagle at bsky.social. You can follow me on Letterboxd too. I think I update sometimes. I always forget. I'm bad at that. I don't have a 20-year-old spreadsheet like Donato does. But more importantly, you can go to www.certifiedforgotten.com. You can sign up for our newsletter at certifiedforgotten.com/newsletter. We have a couple of pieces that will be dropping over the next couple of weeks. Our own Christine Makepeace has written a piece about Sacrament. We've got a couple other pieces that I know are in the pipeline. Rob Hunter writes for us sometimes, question mark.
When he wants
feels
to.
like it. When he's up to it. So yeah, check out our original film criticism. Sign up for our newsletter and get those in your inbox every Friday. And I am going to be absent for the next 2 weeks. I am gallivanting and traveling around the world, and I bet that you might see some familiar faces pinch hitting for me while I'm away. And I think if I were you, I would be pretty excited about that.
Guests on guests.
Guests on guests on guests. All right, that is our episode. Thank you so much. We will see you soon.